Now, hello guys. So I want us to move on. So we had remained with the internal rate of return. So let us move on with internal rate of return. So internal rate of return, IRR. So IRR is our last one. IRR. So IRR, internal rate of return. So IRR, internal rate of return. Then let us define what is the. Let us define it first, and we say this is the discounting rate where NPV equals to 0. So this is the discounting rate. This is the discounting rate. Discounting rate where net present value equals to 0. Equals to 0. So that is what we mean when we talk about the IRR. I.e., present value cash inflow equals to the present value cash outflow. So the present value cash inflow equals to the present value cash outflow. It can be IRR can be determined depending on the nature of the project. Depending on the nature of project as follows. So number A, in case of an equal cash flow, in case of an equal cash flows, so in case of an equal cash flow, how do you compute IRR? So a good example of an equal cash flow ni kama hii. Year 1, year 2, year 3, year 4, year 5, up to year 6, they are different. This is a good example of an equal cash flow. So in that case, this is the format. This is the steps. Steps followed. Number A, number one. Number one, compute NPV. Compute NPV using the cost of capital provided. Cost of capital provided. Number two, if NPV is positive in one above, if NPV in step 1 is positive, uh, compute another NPV with a higher rate, with a higher discounting rate to make NPV negative. To make NPV negative. That's number one. Now, in case the NPV in step 1 is negative. Now, assume now the NPV you compute in step 1 is negative. Compute another NPV using a lower discounting rate to make the NPV positive. So, or if NPV in step 1 is negative, So it's apparently negative. Compute another NPV. Compute another NPV with a lower discounting rate to make it positive. Number 3, step number 3, and the last one. Step number 3, determine IRR using the following formula. Determine IRR using the following formula. So IRR is equals to the lower rate, the lower discounting rate plus into bracket NPV of the lower discounting rate divided by absolute NPV, then you multiply with the higher discounting rate minus the lower discounting rate. That is all about it. And we shall use this example of the December 2023. So we are going to use example of December 2023. So tunasema LDR ni lower discounting rate na HDR higher discounting rate. So we are going to use the equation for December 2023. Now step number one, you are supposed to calculate the NPV, and we have it. So the NPV already we had calculated the NPV. So in step number one here, you can confirm in your previous video, but we say that NPV is equal to 60,441.9 minus the cost ilikuwa ngapi? Let me confirm. 57,750. 57,750. Haya, na huu mwingine NPV ilikuwa ni 65,398.35 minus the cost ni 55,500. 55,500. So we need those two first. First thing first. So first thing first. Okay, so let us get the NPVs. Though we had calculated, tulikuwa tusha calculate the other day. Tunasema ni 60,441.9 57,750. So hiyo NPV yake ni 2691.9. So that's step number 1. Pia the other project 65,398.35 minus 55,500. 98.35. Now that's step number 1 here. Step number 1. Compute NPV using the rate provided. So compute NPV using the rate provided. Now let's go to step number 2. So this one you know how to compute NPV. We did in our previous class. That's not an issue. Let's go to step number 2. If the NPV in step number 1 is positive, compute another NPV with a higher rate. Remember this rate is to 15%. So we are supposed to use another higher rate than 15%, maybe 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, 21, and so on, to make this NPV negative. I would prefer to use a rate which is between 28 to 30%. So let's go to our table. You can go to your table, you pick the one which is in the table. So kwa table nikiangalia the highest is 30%, 30. So tutumie 30%. Now let us use a higher rate. So use a higher rate. So we have the years. So tunasema tuko still on project X. So years tuko na 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 and 6. Then that's 7,500. That is 7,500. Minus 16,500. 30,000. 30,000. 22,500. 9,000. 7,500. Then our present value interest factor itakuwa ni 30%. 30%. So we shall use a higher rate to make the NPV negative. So a higher rate, so itakuwa ni 0.7692, 92, 0.59, 17, 0.4552, 0.35, 01, 0.2693 na 0.2072. Tuko sawa. So we can get the present value. Present value, so that we can get the total present value. So that we can get total present value. So let us do it together. So once you multiply, you get the present value. So unachukua huyu 7,500 times this figure, unapata huyo. So you multiply each. So 7,500 times this one, you get that one. So once you multiply, you add them together, you get the total present value, which is the same as saying, the present value cash inflow. Now, but remember our cash outflow, present value cash outflow, remember ni ngapi? For project X equal 57,750. So 57,750. So when we less it, we shall get our NPV. So let us less the figure. So 44, 592.9 minus 57,750. So ukiless unapata negative 13,157.1. So ndio hiyo. So if NPV in step 1 is positive, which is it was positive, you are supposed to calculate another NPV which must be negative. But for you to make it negative, you use a higher rate. So hapa tutumia 15%. So in this case here, we used 30%. So 30% makes the NPV negative. Now, once we have that one, we can now find the IRR. So IRR is equal to the lower rate, the lower discounting rate. So between 30 and 15, which one is lower? Up to automatic is 15%. Plus NPV of the lower rate. So NPV of the lower rate is 2691.9 over absolute NPV. Now, absolute NPV ni kumaanisha you take NPV of the lower rate plus the NPV of the higher rate, and we ignore the negative. Sign. So absolute. So unachukua the NPV of the higher rate, you add with the NPV of the lower rate, but you ignore the negative. Absolute, no negative figure. So lower rate is 2691.9. We add 13,157. So you ignore negative. 13,157.1. Then ukishafika hapo, you find the difference between the higher rate. So 30 minus 15. 30 minus 15. So let us do it. IRR is equal to 15 plus. So tunasema 2691.9 divided by 2691.9 plus 13157, 13157.1. So you times, so one ukipata hiyo you times na 15%, so that means 15%, so 2.55. So IRR itakuwa ni ngapi? So 15 plus 2.55 is 17.55%. 17.55%. 17.55%. That is how you do it. That's how you get the IRR. Now, decision criteria. Let me give you the decision criteria. So allow me to wrap this part. Actually, allow me to wrap this upper part. Allow me to, so tumeshamalizana na theory hapo. So decision criteria. Decision criterion. So we say that we are going to say that, let me see. So in the so you say if, so decision criterion if IRR is greater than the cost of capital, so we accept. Now, if IRR is less than the cost of capital, we reject. Now, if IRR equals to cost of capital, means no valid decision. No valid decision. Or we'll call them the point of indifference. Now, in this case, 17.55 is greater than 15%. So we accept. But remember, we also need to do for project Y so that we see which projects we shall go with. So also, you know, the higher the IRR, the better the project. Now, before we accept this one, remember, because this is a mutually exclusive project, we need to pick one of them. We cannot do project X and we do Y. We need to pick one of them. Now we need to compute IRR of project Y, then we give the advice. So let us do it. Project Y, we can do it here. Project Y. So you have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6. So 45,000. 12,000 minus 6,000. 33,000. 33,000 minus 15,000. 22,500. Then our present value interest factor tunatumia 30%. So 30% reason why the NPV here was positive. So to make it negative, we use a higher rate. So tunatumia the same as 30%, so itakuwa ni 0.7692, 0.5917, 0.4552, 0.3501, 0.2693, 0.2072. So we get the present value, so that we get here the present value cash inflows, then we less present value cash outflow, which tunajua ni ngapi. If you were to less, tutoe hii uhitaji hiyo, so tunajua yake ni 55500, 55500. So tupate hiyo so that we get our NPV. And remember, our NPV must be negative. Reason why? Because step 1 is positive. So let us do it. So multiply. So that is it. So we multiply already. So once you multiply each E times C times C, so this one, remember, is step number 2. Step number 2, we want to get a negative NPV, 614 plus 7100.4 minus 2731.2 plus 11553.3 minus 4039.3 plus 4662. Napata 159.2. So minus 55500, which is 4 minus 4340. So tumepata a negative NPV. Now we can get our IRR. Our IRR is the ROA rate, which is, our ROA rate is between 30 and 15. Tutumia hapa 15%. So our ROA rate automatically is 15% plus the rate, the NPV of the ROA rate. The NPV of the ROA rate ndio uko 98.35 divided by absolute. So absolute kumaanisha unachukua zote ya higher na lower, but you make it positive. So this one is 98.35. So this one also make it positive, 4340.8. 4340.8. Then you find the difference. Yeah, 30 minus 15. 30 minus 15. So ukishafanya hiyo, you are good to go. So let us see now. 98. So tutasema hivi 98 itakuwa hivi 15 plus 98.35 divided by 98.35 plus 4340.8 times 15, which is tunapata 10%, 10.43. Kumaanisha this one, the rate is 25.43%. So 23.43% is greater than 15%. So we accept the project. But we cannot accept this one and also accept this one. So we cannot accept this one. So remember, after this one we said we accept, but we can only do one. So accept the project. Reason why? So for this one, because it is greater than 15%, and this one also is greater than 15%. But we cannot accept the two because the projects are mutually exclusive. We can only pick one at a time. So in this case, advice: accept project Y since it has a higher IRR. Since it has a higher IRR. So accept project Y. So you accept project Y since it has a higher IRR. Since it has a higher IRR. So that one marks the end of discounting technique and the traditional technique. So that one marks the end of the discounting technique for modern and tradition. for modern, and tradition. Now let us see some advantages and disadvantages of those models or those items. So advantages and disadvantages. So some of the advantages so we shall start with the advantage of payback period and disadvantage, then tuende kwa hizo in that order yenye tulifanya. So let us look for the advantages and the disadvantages. So let us see advantages. So advantage of tuanza na ARR. Accounting rate of return. So that one is number one, the accounting rate of return. So number one, it is easy to calculate. So the first advantage is to calculate. Number two, simple to calculate. So easy to calculate. Can talk about it is easy to calculate. Number two, it is simple and simple to apply. And simple to apply. So just haraka. Next one, it uses the profits relating to the entire useful life of the project. So it uses profits. It uses profits. So tunasema it uses profits relating to the entire economic life of the project. Relating to entire economic life of project. Number three, so tujaribu ndio tumalize haraka haraka. Number three, it can be used to eliminate projects which are not profitable. It can be used to eliminate projects which are not profitable. Number four, and the last one, it is cheap and economical. So it is cheap and economical. So it is cheap and economical, meaning it does not require sophisticated software. Does not require sophisticated software. So it is cheap and economical. It is cheap and economical, meaning it does not require sophisticated software. Disadvantage of ARR. Disadvantage of ARR. It uses accounting profit which can be easily manipulated. It uses accounting profit which can be easily manipulated. Number two, it ignores time value of money. It ignores time value of money. It ignores time value of money. It is hard or it is difficult to distinguish to distinguish project with the same ARR. With the same ARR. So it is very hard to distinguish. Hii jina gani nimeandika? Hey. To distinguish. Hii jina nimeandika vibaya. Distinguish. So it is difficult to distinguish project with the same ARR. That becomes a problem. Then it is inconsistent. It is inconsistent with the shareholder. The shareholder wealth maximization. Objectives. So hii tumemaliza nayo hivyo. Let's go to the next one. And the next one will go to payback period. Payback period. So advantage of payback period. Advantage of payback period. Advantage of payback period. Advantage of payback period. We can say easy to calculate and simple to apply. Easy to calculate and simple to apply. Number two can talk about it uses cash flows. And not accounting profit. So that's an advantage. Reason why? So we are saying it's an advantage because accounting profit can be manipulated. So that's an advantage. If it uses the cash flows cannot be manipulated. And then another one, it enables management to recover its cost with a stipulated time. Length of time. Stroke period of time. Number four, we can talk about it enables the management to implement many projects. It enables the management to implement many projects, starting with the one with the shortest payback period. Starting with the one with the shortest payback period. Recover the initial outlay and invest in other projects. Recover the initial cost. So recover the initial cost, the initial outlay, cost, and invest in other projects. That's an advantage. So the sooner you recover your cost, the sooner you can invest in another project. The sooner you can recover the cost of that project, the sooner you can start another one. So this one enables the management to do a lot of projects. Disadvantage of payback period. Disadvantage of payback period. Disadvantage of payback period. Number one, it ignores time value of money. It ignores time value of money. Number two, it does not rank projects. It does not rank projects according to their profitability, according to their profitability. That's another disadvantage, that it does not rank the projects according to their profitability. And then uh, it ignores cash flows related to the payback period. It ignores cash flows relating to, so it ignores the cash flow relating to project after payback, the project after payback period, which might lead to poor decision, which might lead to poor decision. So once we recover our cost, this method does not consider the other cash flows iko chini. So what if the other cash flow iko chini will make us to make losses in future? It does not consider those other cash flows, so which can be a bad decision. It is very difficult. It is very difficult to distinguish projects with the same payback period. So it is very hard. So it is very hard to distinguish projects with the same payback period. And then Yamusho, it is inconsistent with the shareholders' wealth maximization objective. So it is inconsistent. It is inconsistent with shareholders wealth maximization objective. Wealth maximization objectives. So that's all about the two of them. Those were the traditional technique. So let's go to the modern technique, starting with NPV. Starting with NPV. So advantages of NPV. I think I can go on the other side. So advantages of NPV. So advantages of NPV. We can start with the first one. We say it uses cash flows and not accounting profit, which cannot be manipulated. So it uses cash flows and not accounting profit, which cannot be manipulated. Which cannot be manipulated. So it uses the cash flows, and not accounting profit. So remember, accounting profit can be manipulated. So accounting profit can be manipulated. Another advantage is to consider time value of money. It considers time value of money. Time value of money. Number 3, it uses cash flows related to the entire useful life. It uses cash flows relating to entire life of the project. Entire life of the project. So it uses cash flows related to the entire life of the project, and then it ranks the projects. It ranks the projects according to their profitability. According to their profitability. Number five. Number five. It is consistent. It is consistent with the shareholders. It is consistent with the shareholders' wealth maximization objective. Wealth maximization objectives. So remember that the main objective of the shareholder, it is not to make the profit. It is that's not the objective of the shareholder. That is the objective of the company or the management. So the objective of the management is to make profit, but the objective of the shareholders is not to make profit, but to increase their wealth. So that's the main objective. Now, NPV, IRR, and all other projects relates to the long-term project of the company. Now, when we say they relate to the long-term project of the company, it means that long-term projects, if they succeed, they relate to wealth creation of the company. Now, if the company wealth increases, it means that the wealth of the shareholders will do what? Will increase. Now, this method is consistent with that. What is that? The wealth maximization of the shareholder. Disadvantages. Disadvantages. Disadvantages of NPV. Number one. Number one. It can be difficult to compute. It can be difficult to compute. It can be difficult to compute and apply when compared with traditional method. So it can be difficult to apply and to compute when compared with this traditional. So these are the traditional method. Number two, we can talk about it can be affected by limitation of calculation of cost of capital. It can be affected by shortcomings, stroke limitations of calculation of cost of capital. So in case where we compute the cost of capital wrongly, then it means when we compute the NPV will be wrong. So if there is any limitation or shortcomings when we compute the cost of capital, that cost of capital will also affect the NPV. Number three, it may conflict IRR. It may conflict IRR when computing projects with same economic life. So it might conflict with the IRR. It may conflict with IRR when comparing. Sorry, when comparing projects with different economic life. So that's a disadvantage. And then it may conflict with IRR. So it may conflict with IRR when computing project with different initial costs. Different initial cost, or the initial outlay. Let me use the word outlay. Number 5, it may conflict. It must also conflict with IRR when comparing projects. So it may conflict with IRR when comparing projects generating non-conventional capital. Generating non-conventional conventional, conventional. Then that is correct. Non-conventional cash flows. So what does that mean? Now it means it will be very hard if the cash flow cannot be predicted. So meaning, i.e., in case cash flows cannot be predicted, cannot be predicted. Okay. So this advantage is also advantage of IRR, and this disadvantage is also disadvantage of IRR. So we save time, so they are the same. So those disadvantages are also another similar disadvantage. It may conflict IRR when comparing projects with different annual cash flows. So that's another one. So number 6. So it might be difficult. It may conflict IRR when comparing projects with different different annual cash flows. PI also, PI. So advantage hapo ya IRR na ni the same. So IRR ni the same. So wewe penye kuna, so for example kuja kusema disadvantage of IRR hapa, it may conflict NPV. So kwa IRR unasema it may conflict NPV when comparing projects with different economic life. Ukija kwa PI unasema it may conflict, kama uko kwa PI it may conflict, unaweza tumia sasa ya vinye iko IRR, or unaweza weka NPV. So also PI, you can also put here PI is the same. I will also send another note as a supplement. So I will send the notes as a supplement. Ukifika hapo, when you want the notes, unaniambia. Just text me this number. I will send you the notes. So PI tumemaliza hivyo. So the last one which we need to check also is discounted payback period. Use this one. So also stroke discounted payback period. Use that one, and also here stroke discounted payback period. So hapa tunataka to save time, they are the same. So that one is okay. Now we are remaining with the two items. So let's mark the end of advantages and disadvantages. So just admit call it just what we call a repetition. So I want us to finish the class. I don't know how many minutes we have. Less than 5 minutes. So let us make use of those 5 minutes. Uh, Challenges experience in investment decision. So what are some of the challenges? For example, we have the limited information. So the main challenge is lack of information. That's number one, lack of information. Number two, I'm not going to write it. Number two, uncertainty in the expected cash flow. Now, when we